Hello and welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. We're here talking to Leliana and asking for stories. Know any stories from Ole?
Of course, Orlesians enjoy telling stories. I shall tell you my favorite tale of Aveline, the Knight of Ole.
That sounds interesting.
A long time ago, a girl child was born to a farmer. He had hoped for a son, not a daughter, and so he told his wife to abandon the child in the woods.
How nice.
Before the cold could claim her, the baby was found by a tribe of Dalish elves who took pity on the poor mewling thing and raised her as their own. Aveline, for that is what they called her, grew strong and quick and clever under the guidance of the elves. She learned to wield the sword as well as any man, could kill a deer with an arrow at 100 paces, and was as graceful on the back of a horse as she was on foot.
I saw that coming.
Many legends have familiar forms and themes. We enjoy them so because we know them. Aveline's Dalish guardians saw that she could easily best any Orlesian chevalier in battle, and wanted to show the cruel humans the child they had left to die. They bestowed upon her a fine horse and armor, and sent her to prove herself to her people in the grand tourney. Now in those days, no woman was allowed to take up arms, let alone compete in the grand tourney, but Aveline kept her helmet on and was not discovered.
Did she win the tourney?
Aveline won many events and gained the approval of the adoring crowd. Eventually, she came face to face with the knight Kaleva in the grand melee. Aveline had already bested him in the joust, and Kaleva was determined not to lose a second time. Out of desperation to regain his honor, Kaleva tripped Aveline and tossed her to the ground, ripping off her helmet as he did so. Silence fell upon the arena as Aveline was revealed. Kaleva declared the previous competitions invalid. A woman had taken part, and this was not allowed. But the crowd cheered for Aveline. Kaleva was furious, for he had lost to a woman and was now being shamed. Blinded by his rage, he forced Aveline to her knees. "Know your place, woman," cried he, and slit her throat.
I was hoping for a happy ending.
The son of the king, Prince Freyan, was present. He recognized Aveline's skill and bravery and began to see the injustice done to the women in his land. When he was made king, he rewrote the laws of Ole so that women could also become chevalier. He honored Aveline and knighted her after her death. And to this day, any female who is knighted reveres Aveline the Brave, for she is the patron of all women chevalier.
There was another story I wanted to hear.
A long time
Oh,
ago,
crap.
they say that when Elindra has cried
Let's
enough...
hear another tale.
Alright, it is my job to spin yarns after all.
Tell me another story I wanted to hear.
Which one?
Do you know anything about the Dalish?
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in a land of their own.
Didn't last.
The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
What do you know about Andraste?
Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride.
The thing is though, if he made
But
all these
Andraste
people,
had an
he
earthly
wouldn't make one
husband
that's better than
and
all
would
of
not
them.
forsake him.
Equality.
Instead,
Damn.
she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that
Like
the
millions
Maker
of other
was moved
peoples.
and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him. And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies.
Sounds like magic.
Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker.
How did she die?
Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hysarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burned at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter.
But Tevinter has a chantry, doesn't it?
The Tevinter chantry claims that in Andraste's last moments, Hysarian's heart softened, and he heard the voice of the Maker telling him to end her suffering. He plunged his sword into her heart, and as her blood washed over his hands, he became one of the faithful. Dissenters said that the Archon only converted because he could not stem the tide of Andraste's cult, and was forced to do so to stay in power. We will never know for sure.
Let's just move on. Which was very interesting. We're going to talk to... Well, we're going to sell some stuff first. So,
Are you sure I can't interest you in this hat? A pair of earrings, perhaps? A cheese knife?
let me see your wares, Burden.
I'm sure you'll be pleased with the goods my boy and I have collected. And with your discount.
Yep. Right, take it. Yay! Keep that for now. Yay! Human shield. Don't care about it. Sell. Might as well. Ooh, I can buy it again. Do. It's a mall. Staff. 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 Oh, excuse me. Ooh. Manual Ranger. Give me. Oh, a backpack too. Yeah, I think that's everything. So we'll stop here, and the next video will be, well, still talking to people, I guess.